My first job out of college was with Hewlett-Packard. HP was founded by two wonderful Catholic businessmen, Dave Packard and Bill Hewlett. Bill and Dave are responsible for many great quotes about how to run an ethical company. And it was just by coincidence this week that I heard one of Bill's most famous, although ironically, it's not particularly about ethics, but more just how to run a good business. And it struck me as something appropriate for today. He says, "You cannot manage what you cannot measure, and what gets measured gets done." At some level, this is obvious. Getting things done takes focus, and it's human nature to get distracted. Thus, it's only by committing ourselves, by writing stuff down about what we intend to do, summoning our willpower, and both acting and measuring and tracking ourselves as we act, that we ever get anything done. And this philosophy of measurement has served me well in my engineering career. But I think it can be applied more broadly in our lives, even to something as subjective as living out our faith. If we can decide on our spiritual goals and create metrics for our progress towards them, we can better serve Christ. Now, we need to be careful here. History and the Bible are littered with examples of people who let some intermediate metric substitute for the actual goals. It seems odd to say this, but there is a great risk that if we measure our faith in hours prayed or dollars given, we could be in trouble. These are good things to be sure, but they can also be done insincerely, and thus undermine the true goal of growing closer to Christ. So then the question becomes, what should our metric be? How should we be measuring ourselves? As a community, how can we prove that we are living up to what Christ calls us to be in society? What metric should we use? And I'd like to propose that today's gospel gives us an incredibly useful metric. Do we love our enemies? This is a wonderful metric we can use to judge ourselves and how we are doing. It's not enough for us to love our friends and our family. As Christ tells us today in the gospel, he says, "What credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them." No, we must reach for something much higher, much more difficult to do. We must love our enemies. And how this ties into the measurability is this is measurable. It's a goal commanded by Christ, and it's something we can create objective metrics to judge ourselves against. So I'd like to propose that this week we do something a little bit different. That we actually spend some time to write down all the people in our lives, if we're being honest with ourselves, we don't love very much. Now, we might want to be careful. You might want to call this your special friends list. I'd hate for this list to end up on the wrong table and get in the wrong person's hands. So you might be a little bit careful with this piece of paper. But it's something that we can use to work on this problem. We can go through the list person by person and ask ourselves, why is it we struggle to love them? What is it we could do to get over that hurdle? Now, make no mistake, I'm not claiming this is going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of prayer, self-discipline, and most of all, it's going to take a lot of forgiveness, because forgiveness is the most powerful tool we have to engender true love. But imagine what would happen to our lives if we brought this kind of focus to this issue, that we actually wrote these people's names down and actually worked this year on going from a position of dislike or at worst hatred into a position of genuine love for even the people we most struggle to love. For purpose of discussion, let's say you end up writing down 8 individual people in 5 groups or organizations that you really, really struggle with. I want you to imagine that next Christmas, you've whittled that list down to 2 people in one group. We are human after all. We're probably never going to get the list to 0. But we can do our best to try. Imagine how freeing that will be to not be carrying around that burden of hatred. Imagine how much more peaceful you will feel not struggling with that discontent. Imagine how much closer to Christ you will be to know that you have further opened your heart to love as Christ loved us.